Hello and welcome back to Crypto Saving Expert, the show where we discuss the latest cryptocurrency news and introduce you to the pioneers and the founders of the space. Today, I'm very kindly joined by one of my favorite returning guests from Borgpad. Daniel, how are we doing today?
Hey, how you doing, man? So glad to be back. It's been a while, but always feels good to be back.
Awesome, man. Obviously, today waking up was a little bit of a tricky one. I tried not looking for a bit, but opening up Twitter, it was a bloodbath out there. What was your first reaction, Daniel, from waking up this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I said this just this morning to the team when we had the morning stand-ups. This one really hurts. It's been a while since I felt this kind of depressive, because it's been lasting as well. This is like the sixth dip on a row, and it just keeps on dipping. The issue is, for me at least personally, is it was quite not easy, but it was relatively foreseeable. And we didn't, my personal portfolio didn't act on it like I would have, should have. So that was a bit disappointing, but we dug in it a lot from the macro perspective the last coming weeks. So I actually have very strong opinions about what is happening, how it's happening, and what it will mean for the future. So very happy to discuss that, but for sure, like this one really hurts.
Yeah, it does. And I can see the sentiment from the community as well. Hats off to you if you're one of the lucky ones that were in shorts over the weekend and you kept those open. Let us know in the comments if that was you. But yeah, there is a lot of pain. However, I think we'll touch upon this as well. There is a silver lining. There can be hope even on the downest of days. But I'll just let everyone know what we're going to cover in today's stream. At first, we're going to talk about Black Monday. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about the events and what's triggered this, guys. But later on, we're going to be delving into Borgpad. We're going to be talking about the future of launches, and we're also going to be talking about meme coins, guys. And there's a little bit of alpha later in the show about an upcoming launch that I want to talk to you guys about. And Daniel's going to spit some wisdom there for us. But Daniel, the last time we actually met was back in Paris now. NFT Paris, I believe it was at the Pudgies event. The market seemed, we were in a slight downtrend then, but the market did seem a little bit more optimistic then. But how was Paris for you, and have you been to any events since?
Listen, in fact, that's true, yeah. And your allusion to the meme coins later is actually the reason why I was in Paris. So we're doing something really cool with the Pudgy Penguins, and that's what I want to share a bit with you as well today. But I haven't been since. We've been locked in. Haven't really left the house much. The team's just working hard. We shipped a new way of launching TGs and tokens, generally speaking, last week, which worked really well. The market's perfectly validated what we did, because I'll tell you about it later. It's the whole idea of how can you launch tokens, because you look at TGs and token launches. They are, on one hand, the very reason why the crypto industry exists beyond Bitcoin. It started in 2014 with the Ethereum ICO at $30 million fully FDV. And since then, we've had, Pundit funded 15 million tokens last year. Yeah. And so on one hand, it's the very reason why we're all here, but at the same time, it's also the most extractive and destructive impact on the industry. The amount of extraction that happened just this cycle, from the Trump launch, the Melania, Libra, Alone, and Solana, but then it goes beyond. It's completely crazy. And that's my personal fight that I've been fighting for a while now, with Borgpad specifically, but now with this new project as well. And yeah, since Paris, we've launched a new way that can guarantee a price for investors whilst eliminating all sorts of insiders. There's no market makers, there's no nonsense, and it's the most holistic way of actually launching tokens. I'm very excited. We did last week. It worked really well, and we can show with hard fact and numbers and charts of how this works and why I think this could be the way the industry gravitates towards beyond Borgpad.
Brilliant. And just we'll touch upon Borgpad now. We'll go into it. For everyone listening, if you're not aware of Borgpad and if you haven't seen our streams before, what is the core of Borgpad and where does it differ, Daniel?
Sure. So Borgpad, as it relates all back to TGs, as I mentioned. We all have been early investors in tokens, or at least we try to get in as early as possible and we believe in something. But the reality is that over the last 4 or 5 years, I started with centralized exchanges listing tokens at $1 billion valuations, and most recently as well, market makers extracting from launches that happened directly on chain. The most famous one obviously being Trump. The industry has been skewed in a way that retail investors are the exit liquidity for insiders, and that's something that we can't build crypto on. The whole purpose of crypto is to decentralize finance, to make it open, fair, community centric, and TGing, as I said, is probably the most important. It's the only real product market fit we have in crypto. It's launching new tokens. That's really the speculative asset class that crypto thrives on. So we've been speaking a lot about fair launches for a while, and everybody has their own definition. So we came about like, okay, let's bring clarity to what a fair launch means. Let's show the world how fair launch should look like, and that's what Borgpad is. It's the platform for true fair launches, for real strong projects, and that's what we've been trying to do ever since. And we're trying to improve every day a little bit more.
Brilliant. And let's talk about your time at Swissborg as well, because I imagine if people perhaps aren't aware of Borgpad yet, they're definitely aware of Swissborg. You were at Swissborg for many years now, before Borgpad as well. Can you touch upon the relationship there between Borgpad and Swissborg?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the overlap between the crypto savings community and the TMG community and Swissborg is very, very big, and something that we pride ourselves a lot in, and so happy to keep fostering this really good relationship with you. I worked for Swissborg for 3-4 years,
Wow.
and touched every single product there. Started as a really junior guy, and ended up co-founding Borgpad with the co-founder of Swissborg, which is Anthony, who's also was my boss, is my mentor, and someone I just respect a lot. And so it was an amazing journey. We grew the community together, both with Martini Guy, with Swissborg, and there's a lot of symbiosis there. And hopefully a lot of your community got richer through Swissborg as well by keeping their money on Swissborg. That's the ideal. The link, sorry, to answer your question between Borgpad and Swissborg is that Borgpad is the on-chain arm, so to speak, of Swissborg. We do directly things outside of the app to expand the ecosystem. Things that would be hard to do inside the app, we managed to do on-chain directly. Open up as well the possibility of the Swissborg ecosystem to people that, because Swissborg is very regulated, one of the best regulated companies in the world, and therefore some countries you might not be able to access Swissborg through. And so Borgpad is a way for us to do cooler things that are a bit more out there, a bit more adventurous. In this case, launching new tokens directly on Solana. And then list them later on in Swissborg. So we like the more adventurous, experimental, fun part of Swissborg that does crazy things on chain.
Brilliant. And what was the decision there to build on Solana? Why did you choose Solana as the home?
I feel very strongly about this, actually. I think Solana, well, first of all, Nicolas, our CTO, was very bullish on Solana 2-3 years ago, when it was at $8, and I thank him for that amazing entry. I did very well on it. You should, if you have a tech guy next to you, you should always listen to what she says when it comes to layer ones and the tech and crypto. They know best. Anyway, so Solana clearly had a USP 3 years ago it was more user friendly than Ethereum, and now we see the shift a couple of years later that the actual retail activity on chain is happening on Solana. And this cycle, the key factor why Solana is interesting is because it has essentially become the Binance of this cycle. What I mean with that is, 4 years ago, if Trump were to have launched a token, he would have probably launched it on Binance. Why? Definitely. Because that's where the liquidity was, right? So by launching on Binance, you immediately knew that people were going to buy it. Like, do you remember the saying, right? When Binance, the WEN Binance, when Binance. Yeah. That was like the holy grail for every token. Well, when's the last time you've seen it this cycle? There's been a real shift where the liquidity has essentially shifted from Binance and from centralized exchanges, generally speaking, to Solana. And so there's a lot of also non-organic volume happening in Solana. There's a lot of bots, there's a lot of copy trading, there's a lot of snipers, etc. But the point is, volume is on Solana. And so if you want to look for deep liquidity, which is what Trump was after, then you're gonna find on Solana better than any other place. And so that's why Solana primarily it's the place where things are simply happening for retail this cycle, and it is this cycle of Binance. That's not more, not less.
I've got to say, hats off to the Solana Foundation as well. From that $8 mark, they kept building, they kept putting on for the developers, and like what you mentioned, if we've listen to the techies. If they're building on Solana, it's even if the price is low, if they keep building, it's going to come in waves. Obviously, we're down about 70% from the recent all-time high, up at like 290. But I still hold it. I still really love the community, and I I think Solana is the way forward, and I don't think it's gonna change anytime soon. So glad to see you guys have stuck with Solana and built on it there as well. Very, very big things coming in the future for Solana, I'm sure. But let's touch upon some of the mechanics of Borgpad and what we've got on the screen here. We've got draft picks, blitz pool, goat pool. Could we go through some of these and explain what people are looking at when they click onto the site here and what opportunities they have?
Absolutely. So I'll make it very brief. So just to give you a holistic understanding of why we're doing it rather than focusing on what it is, because you can discard that for yourself if you're interested. The key point here is, if you start with draft picks, I've spoken to hundreds of founders over the last couple of years whilst doing Borgpad, Swissbook, and the hardest thing in crypto, but yet the most important one, is to build community. It is the number one thing. And the issue is that today we live in an industry because of different incentives, and there's a path until very recently where, as a well-connected founder, you could come with an idea that's essentially replicating the 150th layer 2 with a slight different modification, but it could have been anything else. It was GameFi a couple of years ago, it was SocialFi after, etc., whatever the narrative, AI-Fi most recently, whatever the hot narrative was in the moment. If you were a well-connected, charismatic founder, you could have raised a whole bunch of money from angels who would have connected you to VCs. The VCs would have given you more money. You would have kept increasing evaluation. And essentially found yourself with a valuation that's so high in the multi-billion dollars. That's the only way to offload it, is to do it arbitrarily through centralized exchanges who help you set a price, and market makers who help you support it / extract the incoming buy flow from retail. So the whole point of this is that you created a company as a founder to multi-billion dollar status. You yourself became a multi-millionaire in the process, yet you never tested the actual market for what they think your company's worth. You just did it all behind closed doors. You have an amazing retail community that you need to sell to afterwards, but you've never actually dared to test it with them beforehand. And so draft picks, that's the most important thing here, is our way to tell founders, well, you're fighting your fight. Well, fight the good fight and fight it with the community in an honest way. Go out there, ask the community, how much am I worth? What is the actual price before you launch a token? And now you have a much greater degree of confidence to be able to go into the market and be like, hey, my $5, $10, $20 million valuation, whatever it is justified. The way we do it is, I'm not going to bore you with the math, but there's a very simple equation between how much valuation you have and how much liquidity you need in the market to sustain that valuation. The higher the valuation, the more liquidity depth I need, right? And so if you want to launch a $10 million valuation, that roughly means, give or take, that you need a $500,000 liquidity pool across markets, which means that either you're going to be able to put the 500K in yourself, or what we're doing with Borgpad is you're raising it from our community. And so if the community is willing to give you 500K, they'll be like, yeah, okay, there's enough buying pressure for you to sustain that $10 million valuation, and the depth will be accordingly. If, on the other hand, you barely raise 50K, that means that you're very far off from your goal, which probably means, if you make it strictly linear, it means that you're probably at the 10th of your valuation that you're hoping for, which would be 1 million in this case. So so we ask users here, projects to come in, to get the community involved and be like, hey, I'm about to launch my token, show the support on Borgpad, vouch money. It's a non-committed vouch, but like, it's, you come in with you connect your wallet, you be like, I'm willing to invest to True Tribe, for instance, $1,000 of my own money with it. Okay, cool. We then analyze your wallet. We see if that commitment is realistic, whether you actually have $1,000, what your movements are, and then we can come to the project and be like, this is actually how much buying pressure you have for your TG, and that will allow them to have a much better trust. And often what happens is that projects revalue their valuations to the lower, which is beneficial for users because they're getting that cheaper price, and just realigns market expectations with the founders' expectations. And that's a key point that we do with Borgpad. So when we actually launch them and we launch the tokens, the valuation is in line, and they don't launch at stupid valuations, which are based on nothing but what they did behind closed doors and actually never tested the market for it. So it's a much healthier way, holistic way to test the market, gain confidence as a founder, and get a better deal as a user, as an investor.
Exactly, and I imagine it goes both ways. You know, sometimes there's an you have an oversubscribed amount of commitments, and then you go, oh, hang on, perhaps we're shooting too short here. So it goes in both ways. I just wanted to give a shout out here. We've got Zenko Protocol, good friend of ours over at CSC. Jason will be coming on the show very soon. We do actually have an article on Crypto Saving Expert Plus, guys, all about Zenko. So if you're wanting to go read further on Zenko, head over to Crypto Saving Expert, type in Zenko, and we will have Jason on a live stream very soon, and he is in the Discord as well if you want any questions answered, guys. But let me just head back to Borgpad. 2 seconds, my iPad is just, there we go. Brilliant. Okay, and let's talk about the blitz pool here as well, and also then we'll go on to the goat pools here.
Right, that's very, very simple. Blitz pool, goat pools, just depends on the valuation you are. If you blitz pool, if it's less than $10 million, we're probably going to get in your blitz pool. It simply means it's going to be quick, fun. The amount of money that needs to be raised is quite small. If you're in a goat pool, it means that by definition you're a goat, and we're aiming for something higher, so it's something a bit more interesting happening there. But the most asymmetric returns probably happen at blitz pools. So that's simply that.
Awesome. Just give a shout out. We've actually got Jason in the audience here as well. Big shout out to Jason. Thanks for showing up today, guys. Appreciate all of you. Make sure to slap a like and subscribe if you're not already also. But Daniel, let's talk about meme coins. What is the issue with meme coins at the moment, and what is Borgpad working towards to fix this?
Right. So meme coins were a funny one because they are the latest iteration of this extractive token launching model or the whole token launching narrative, an aspect of the markets where I said before, on Pumlet Fund, you've had tens of millions of tokens that were launched last year. If I'm not mistaken, it's roughly 15 million that bonded. So which is a crazy amount. That's about 10,000 tokens a day since they launched. Obviously, so we did the math, and only roughly around 0.04%, so a very, very minute amount, actually a P&L positive. The 96% are completely under the water. The average, more important stat is that the average lifespan of a meme token on Pumlet Fund was 12 days. So on average, between the moment that it was launched and it died, it means it was rugged or whatever might happen to it, was 12 days. It's very hard to build an industry on that kind of short-termism and super high rotation speeds that we see specifically in meme tokens. And so whilst we are doing Borgpad on our side and trying to do good, healthy, holistic launches, we see Pumlet Fund launching 10,000 tokens a day, all of them extracting value from retail users, because even if you just put a couple bucks in each one in a few of them, it accumulates over time, and so it's a net loss for retail community members, which is really what the product is it's aimed for, right? The target market for Pumlet Fund is retail degenerates, like potentially you and I, like our degen side, and we thought like, okay, I've got a great token here, low valuation, and then minutes later I get rugged again, etc., etc. So it's a very net negative and extractive force in the industry, and it's just something that meme coins, what they did very well is to get for this cycle new people in the market, because it was the new NFTs of this cycle essentially. But then as soon as you came in, you put a couple bucks in, you saw that you got rugged once, twice, by the third time you're gone. And so it's the stickiness of new people coming into the market. It was like as soon as someone came in, they immediately got pushed away again by how extractive, how greedy, how short-term as the market was, right? So Anthony and I, my boss, co-founder, mentor, co-founder at Swisswalk, we thought long and hard about how can we fix meme coins? Because there's one thing that meme coins do very well, and that's create culture. And culture in crypto, which is the common denominator for community, is everything. A community, people that subscribe to crypto savings experts, they subscribe to you and follow you because you stand for something. There's a certain culture that's built around what you say, the way you put information forward. And there's no better financial vehicle to transmit that than a meme coin. A meme coin, through its memetics itself, can transmit the essence of a culture. And you've seen it with Bored Apes. The community of Bored Apes feels very different than the Pudgy Penguin community. The culture around is very different, right? But it's a rallying cry that human beings who want to belong to something, that's a deep psychological necessity we have. Meme coins are probably the best financial asset to do that. Great. So we thought, how can we bring the best of meme coins, which strictly speaking is just the community building aspect, to something that's much more long-term vision, that's true, there's actual some meaning, vision behind it, rather than just here's a joke. It's funny, it comes about, it stays for a couple of days, on average 12 days, then it leaves and most likely will never come back again, and you sat with the bags that are worthless. And that's what we now calling social currencies. And social currencies essentially are, for me, not a replacement for meme coins, but the next logical step for them. And what social currencies are is essentially the best of both worlds of the memetic side of a meme coin and the strong utility of an actual serious altcoin. And in this case, the rallying point between both is intellectual property. If you look at the memetic, what is the memetic of a meme coin? Its image, its logo. That's what you can financialize. And so if you create a currency, a meme coin, where the underlying IP of it is directly owned by the community, and you as a meme coin, what you do is use that IP, and the Pudgy Penguins is the best example, to create real revenue in the real world. So what they did, for instance, is they took the IP of the Pudgy Penguins, they went to Walmart, they sell millions of dollars of toys. That's just an example. And how cool would it be if that money from the toys would now be directly brought back to the token holders? How do you do this without them becoming equity holders, etc.? Well, there's a few simple ways of doing it. One simplest way would be buy back and burn. I take the revenue from the toys that I sell at Walmart, and I commit to whatever percentage, let's say 50%, just to say a number, of the revenue that's generated through toys goes back to directly buy back and burn the token, the Pudgy Penguin, the Penguin token. In that case, what happens, as a Penguin holder who helps create the intellectual property of Pudgy Penguins, because the IP is only worth it if people subscribe to it. If tomorrow no one cares about Pudgy Penguins, their logo is worth nothing, right? Same thing. Same thing for Star Wars. The only reason that Star Wars, the IP of Star Wars, is worth billions is because that they know that next time they bring out a movie or a new Darth Vader figurine, people are going to buy it, and they're going to have at least this much revenue, right? So so you just do a buyback and burn, and the token goes straight back into token holders because there's buying pressure, the token goes up, etc. The other way would be to create a DAO, and the token holders hold a DAO, and the revenue just goes back into DAO. So then you as a token holder, it's like owning Warren Buffett's hedge funds, Berkshire Hathaway, and that because he buys Apple and Nike, whatever stock he owns, and you as a holder of the holding company, you therefore own also the net asset value of those assets. So you can do the same thing with DAO. We just create revenue, it goes back into the DAO, we buy Bitcoin with it, whatever we want to buy, and you as the asset holder will have the proportional amount. If the total net asset value of the DAO is worth, let's say $100 million worth of Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever else is, if you own 100% of that, well, you own $100 million worth of assets, because that's what you own, right? So there's many ways that you can transmit through IP and revenue creation real money back into a meme coin, and all of a sudden you can be like, wait, I can use the memetic aspect of a meme coin, use that to impact the real world, create real revenue through the IP, and then bring it back into the token in a very simplified way. And the user needs to do nothing, just hold the token, and the value comes straight back to it. And so that's what we have created now with the new project we're building, which is called Nomu. Nomu is that's the reason why we saw each other in Paris. It is the fish of the Pudgy Penguins. Most of the fish get eaten. He's the one that doesn't get eaten. In fact, he's the one that's going to feed the trenches. That's what you see there. So Nomu is essentially the first generation of social currencies that will do exactly what I just described. We will use the IP with Nomu. We're essentially going to focus at first on food and beverage. We created a Happy Meal with one of the biggest sushi companies in France. And essentially, this is already done. I haven't announced it on Twitter yet, but I'm telling you, this is already signed. And so every time we sell one of those Happy Meals, essentially with a sushi menu, then revenue goes back to Nomu DAO, and then buyback and burn, and then as asset value of DAO goes straight back into the token holders who own to 100% the DAO. And so you create all of a sudden the first generation of meme coins that is not a meme coin, that goes much further, and that has a long-term horizon, that has a real business model, which most of the industry doesn't have. So you create the best of both worlds. And I feel very strongly about that. This is something that can heal the space, still keep the fun of it, and actually create something that impacts the real world. Because now all of a sudden you have Pudgy Penguin toys and you have them at home, whatever it is, there's something that's created in the real world, which is a toy, it's a menu, and you therefore change the world around you as well with it. So which is very beautiful, and that's what we're seeing here with Nomu.
It's combining the best of both worlds. I think a lot of people have been yearning for, people are calling it memes 2.0, but I think how you defined it there, social currency, it actually hits the nail on the head there. People like Murad and some of the other influencers, they were relying on the community aspect of things. But I think, you do have to add this utility, especially when you look at some of the, some of these top altcoins, even in the top 100, a lot of them are not completing what they set out to complete. They do have a failure of concept. So if we can combine this with meme coins, add utility there, some of them are going to outperform a lot of these altcoins anyway, because a lot of the time you'll be more rewarded for holding these meme coins, and you'll probably have fun in the community while doing it as well. So it's good to see. I'm definitely interested to find out a bit more about the restaurant in France as well. I think it's really cool utility. It's also what we were trying to do with Chippy as well.
Exactly. It's actually not too far away from you guys were doing Chippy.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. And in fact, going back to your point, if tomorrow we see how the regulation changes in the US, and there's a fair chance that you have equity markets that will come on chain, meaning that tomorrow you might be in a world where what you have is stores of value, Bitcoin. You have layer ones. Why? Because they actually have an economic model that's derived through MEV and through fees that come into protocol, so I can value them correctly. You have equities, and then you have meme coins and altcoins. But how will an altcoin, like, take any arbitrary altcoin you have in your portfolio? Chances are it is not a proxy for equity. You do not own the company. There's no revenue flow that goes back into the altcoin. It is a governance token. It is a utility token, whatever it might be. All of the things are so weak. Imagine if you bring equity back into the equation and you actually bring penny stocks to crypto, penny stocks who are actually owning the company. You're done. Most altcoins will either have to pivot to become revenue generating assets, meaning, or revenue distributing assets, not in the form of dividend, but it can be through the mechanics I just described, or I think you're going to die. There's just nothing around it. And meme coins might survive because of the community aspect, but imagine you then combine a meme coin with the revenue generating aspect. You can compete with penny stocks because you are directly receiving the value of the revenue created, like a stock, through dividends or any other method. And that actually works. But most of the altcoins we have today, then a dire situation, especially if you bring on-chain penny stocks and just generally equity markets. It's going to be a rough awakening for most of them. But yeah, so that's a bit more the macro picture. But I do think, to your first point from Black Monday, that we are going to have a good 2025. And if you want, we can dive into why that is. But it's painful today. But
yeah, I've just brought this up. Absolute sea of red today. Even if we go into the week, not much better here. We've got EOS and Fartcoin up in the week. Let's have a look at the month as well. Similar story crazy there. We can see Solana all the way down here, 30% down in the month. Gala 30% also. Polygon as well. Polygon's been having a rough time over the last year or two. To all the Polygon holders, we got Say there as well, also 35% down. But we actually did speak about this briefly off air, Daniel. You've got a really good thesis on this, and you potentially see a silver lining here. Do you want to delve into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, now as a founder who launches tokens, and as a founder who now will launch Nomu itself and its own, I kind of have a good thing on the pulse of when you should launch a token, and I think there's actually no better time than doing right now. The reason for it is asymmetry. People get caught off on the tariff war that's happening right now, and the speculation that's inflation, and obviously that with the fear mongering with a recession incoming. But you got to understand that the US, specifically the US sovereign, is currently facing a $36 trillion debt. And the rollover of that debt this year is around $5 trillion. Wow. Current, it's huge. So at the current interest rates, there's simply not a way to refinance that debt. So there's no, and if you look at Arthur Hayes does a great essay on that, and he's a great guy. If you want to learn more about macro, I'd go to see Arthur. He's an amazing guy. He for those who don't know it, used to be at BitMEX, created his own hedge fund since. Crypto Haze, there you go, that's him. He has actually very colorful explanations as well on how to what the whole macro picture is on about. The whole point that I tend to agree with him a lot is that the US right now needs to find a way to roll over the debt and to not default on it. At the current interest rates, the price to pay would be incredibly high. So you need to find a way to print money. However, the current the chair, Jerome Powell, was still appointed by previous Biden administration. So and his mandate is until May 2026. So he still is there for a year. To force the Fed to start printing more money, you need to, at this point, as the new government, create a macro environment that justifies that. In this case, the simplest way of doing it, if you look at as a voter base of Trump, these are not people that hold asset classes. These are the average American that's more rural based, etc. So the pain that they feel based on asset classes is quite low. So he can go very aggressive on tariffs, all of this. Why? To weaken the US economy. And what happens when you can weaken the US economy? Well, you can start printing money again, lowering interest rates, roll over the debt that you need to roll over. So I do think that if you zoom out a little bit from the tariff war that's going on and all the noise, it is, at the end of the day, just a prefix to be able to print money and to reinject liquidity. And crypto assets, I think today, is still nothing but a high beta on M2, which is global money supply. So the moment liquidity is injected back into the economy, and there's more dollar units than there's yesterday. And the whole point of the Trump US, his government, is that they want to lower the deficit to 3%, but still deficit, meaning that by definition, there's still more money printing that's expected to happen. Right now, you can't do it because the inflation is still too high. It's above 2%. The economy is still relatively strong. So how do you force the hand of the Fed to rationally start printing monies by weakening the economy in the short term? So you're willing to look like a fool in the short term to then come out winning in the long term. And I really think that's what's happening. Arthur Hayes has a similar view in it. And therefore, I do think that the second half of the year is one where we're gonna see a massive relief rally that we all expect. So, as a founder, as an investor, if you can place your bags now and hold on to it, I mean NFA, but it's just a personal conviction, and it's what I'm going to do with Nomu and what we're going to do with Borgpad. It's simply the best moment to launch a token because you have the whole upside to ride again. I think the bigger macro picture, if you zoom out, is in fact very bullish. It's just where now we are willing to suffer short term to justify money printing. Otherwise, without the pain, with inflation still being above 2%, it would be very hard to justify it. But if you could weaken the economy, then all of a sudden you have the necessary pretext to start printing and go ballistic again. On top of that, China, crazy real estate market, crazy in debt. They just waiting for the whole world is waiting for a weaker dollar to start reprinting, but China can't start printing with the dollar still being this high. So there's a whole confluence of things. The yen, you might see it push to 160, 180, whatever the number might be, I don't know, but the whole world is looking for the EU. Sorry, I'm going all the tangents, but you'll see that this replicates across every single of the big four players in the world economy. The EU just re-announced to rearm itself, and they're gonna need trillions of dollars to rearm the EU because they're feared about a Russian invasion, whatever it might be. They all need a weaker dollar because it's the global reserve currency to do that. Trump needs a weaker dollar to push his agenda forward. So I think right now we're really in a position where you gotta zoom out. You gotta understand that we're willing to look like a fool in the short term. The US government,
it's
in this
all
case,
one big chess move. It really is. You know, he's forcing these tariffs to push the Fed into lowering interest rates. We can see here by some of the stats, on our tweet here. It was the largest decline for China since 2008, since the recession in 2008 there. Taiwan not far behind. And this was actually a few hours ago this was posted now. So I imagine some of these are actually worse by now as well. Gold hasn't had too much of a tumble today. Do we think in the future we will see Bitcoin go from a risk on to a risk off asset? Do you think people will in the future turn to Bitcoin when the rest of the stock market is going down? We're definitely not there yet, but you know, this is where we want to see Bitcoin going. But how long will that take, do you think?
I'm not going to do the fool's errand of trying to say how long it will take. I do think it will happen inevitably, eventually. I don't think the narrative that Bitcoin is just a NASDAQ beta is the one that's going to stick. It should and will resemble more to gold going forward. It's the way the mechanics of the asset itself are built in, the scarcity mode, the stock to flow ratio that lowers every 4 years through the halving. It is, in fact, and if you look at this cycle within crypto, it already starts to become this safe to flight to safety asset within crypto, which is obviously its base narrative. But just right now, the degree of volatility in crypto is still very high. But I don't see how. I still believe fundamentally, and I think most people now more than ever in crypto believe fundamentally in the value of Bitcoin. I've always kept a separate part of Bitcoin that I've never touched. I can't see how it will not become a store of value and become a risk-off asset going forward. I don't know when that would happen, but it should.
You'd asked me a few years ago, maybe I would have said by 2025, but we're definitely not there yet. But it is becoming, it is getting better. Even with the volatility, we are seeing, slightly less volatility than perhaps we saw in previous cycles as well. So, but Before we wrap up today, Daniel, I just want to point people in the right direction. How can people get involved with Nomu, and also what's the best way for people to get involved with the Borgpad community and keep an eye on the latest announcements coming up as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that through today's chat, you saw that what we try to do both at Nomu and Borgpad is very counter-cyclical. We try and take the counterintuitive approach to the market, TG project when everybody's in fear. So if you're interested about the primary market, getting involved early, then go to Borgpad, our Twitter, borgpad.com, and you'll find all the stuff there. Go propose your favorite project. If you love a project that hasn't got a token yet, that you think what you heard makes sense, this is the best moment to TG because it factually is, then go tell your founder, go on Borgpad, test the market to see how much you're worth today, empirically, without committing. That doesn't mean you need to launch, but at least you have an idea of a rough number. And the number is actually not that rough. The number is quite precise. We'll tell you, well, this is how much you're worth right now. That's how much the market. And then the founder can decide, yes, I'm happy to go for that, or I want to wait, whatever it might be. Although they shouldn't wait. So that's one thing for the primary markets. If you got wrecked by meme coins and you are destroyed by just seeing the dumbification of crypto going further and further, and you think like a couple of years ago we talked about Byzantine problems, so how to solve those, consensus across different stakeholders, and now we're just like buy my hippopotamus or buy my dog, and you're quite disappointed with that. And so am I. So am I, and know that I am in fact putting personally my heart more and more into Nomu. There's a transition going at Borgpad as well, where I'll take a bit more of a hands-off approach, obviously still in the project, but a bit more hands-off. And my hands-on are going to go into Nomu, and we're going to build the first real social currency that the crypto space has ever seen, where we're going to use the memetic influence to build a community that valorizes an intellectual property. We're going to use that intellectual property and the value of it to create real business in the real world through partnerships, funding, and we're going to give that revenue straight back to token holders through very simple mechanics, either through buyback and burn or the net asset value of an DL that you as a token holder hold. And it just changes the whole perspective of what a meme coin is and will become in the future. And I think it's something that will be copied a lot in the industry going forward. So it's something that I'm personally extremely bullish on. And I might be the Trojan horse for the next mass adoption cycle of crypto is social currencies. You start seeing it whilst you eat sushi in the restaurant, you see like a fish and chips restaurant, be like, wait, what is this chippy? What is this Nomu? You click on it, you're like, oh wait, I just spent 30 quid in this restaurant. 3 quid went back to all the token holders. I could have myself received money, if my token, my assets could have gone up just by me buying and using it. And so essentially what we think with Nomu is what meme coins are tomorrow is a way to own what you love, whether it's a restaurant brand, whether it's a real estate development, we're going to enable through our intellectual property to create ownership of real asset values, real world assets. We're calling this LWAMs, so real world asset memes, and I think it's going to be the next big meta. And so for that, go to Nomu. We have amazing community already in place. RWAM,
real world asset memes. I like that. I'm going to be stealing that. Awesome. Daniel, thank you so much for today. I look forward to having you on very soon. And also everyone listening in, make sure to head over to Borgpad, give them a follow, join their communities. Also go over, check out it is Eat with Nomu. The project is Nomu, but let me just find the app for you guys. I do have the link in the description for Borgpad as well. You can go find it there. And guys, if you're not in the CSE Plus Discord already, come over into the Discord. We have an AMA today, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. TMG's joining the one on Thursday. Today will be by BlockPro, our in-house professional trader. And also this week, I'm going to be having a live stream with BlockPro as well. We're going to be answering all your questions, how the market's looking, what BlockPro's trading right now. I'll just go through a few of the comments here. We've got the Zenko army in the chat as well. Crypto Bro saying thank you, and Hugo saying thanks for the stream. But guys, thank you so much for joining. Daniel, thank you as always. I will be keeping a close eye on what you got going on at Borgpad, and I hope to have you on the stream again very soon. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Let's go. Bye, guys.